Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Hancock. I'm a professor of communication at Stanford University, the founding director of the Stanford Social Media Lab, and a faculty member of Stanford's Human-Centered AI Institute. And it's a delight to be here today with you talking about AI and its implications for society. I'm going to focus a lot on communication, but I'm here really to talk about AI and communication and how it may affect society. As many of you know, AI is becoming increasingly sophisticated, and it's starting to have a significant impact on how we communicate with each other. For instance, there are now AI-powered chatbots that can mimic human communication. This is just the beginning. In the future, AI will become even more involved in our communication. It will have a profound impact on our society. Now, I hope you thought that all sounded pretty good. It was a little maybe a bit on the boring side, but what's I think kind of cool about it is I did not actually write that. A machine that I asked to write something for me wrote that on my behalf. So even though I was presenting those words as if it was me, Jeff Hancock, behind it was a machine. Let me show you how this AI works. You can see here I've put in a prompt right at the beginning of a speech on AI and communication, how it may affect society. And this is GPT-3, one of the latest cutting edge technologies. And that is literally what I just said to you all in the opening of my speech. GPT-3 is one of several what are called large language models that have really advanced the ability for AI to communicate like human. So this has been a really big improvement, and there are some real new possibilities coming out in the next few months with the next version of GPT-4 and other language models that will make them even better. And you can see that even though it wasn't that necessarily interesting or surprising or unusual, it probably sounded really very much like something a speaker might say. And so we're seeing now how AI is playing a role in the way that we as humans communicate. And this is a really huge and important development that I think has a lot of implications for society, both positive and negative. And before I get into those, I'm just going to go over some of the high-level principles I wanted to share with you all that we focus on here at the Stanford Human-Centered AI Institute. The first of these is that any work on AI should consider the human impact. That's principle number one. And this principle is that we need to develop equitable and trustworthy technology. We must understand how artificial intelligence performs in practice and impacts humanity. In some of our initial work, we asked thousands of people from around the United States whether they had interacted with various kinds of AI like Alexa or Siri, these sort of chat systems that are quite common here in the United States. And what we found is that access to these technologies was not equally distributed across the population. People from poor households, more rural areas, were much less likely to be able to use or have seen these kinds of technologies, whereas wealthier and more educated people use them much more regularly. And this is going to be a huge problem if, in fact, AI can be used to improve human life. So that's principle number one that I wanted to share with you as a major takeaway from today's short talk. The next is that AI should augment human capabilities, not replace them, but to augment them. So artificial intelligence should effectively communicate and collaborate with people to augment their capabilities and make their work better and more enjoyable. And I think this is a really crucial thing. As you'll see, we'll focus much of my talk today on this principle. The last is intelligence. Here, the main idea is that we should be able to understand what AIs are doing for us or on our behalf. And the principle here is that current artificial intelligence systems resist explanation or interaction in terms that are comprehensible by humans. So when I showed you the GPT-3 system writing the intro to my speech, there was no understanding of how that took place. How was it that this system was able to so easily and quickly generate that text? We call this, it comes by several names: explainable AI, interpretable AI, but most AI systems right now are black box. We have a hard time understanding what's going on there. So those are three of the main key principles that I wanted to share with you that we hold as core principles here at Stanford. I'm going to focus on the area of work that I do primarily, which is the idea of augmenting human capabilities. And here I'm going to share with you some different ways that AI can augment communication within society. So the first way that it can do it is by interacting with a human. So here I'm laying out this idea of human AI interaction. Commonly, these forms of AI are called chatbots. I think chatbots are fine as a term, but they sort of underestimate what the potential here is. We now work with a number of different companies and startups, both in Silicon Valley, but across the world, that are developing conversational systems, chatbots, to do all kinds of amazing things with people. We've done research, for example, showing that when people interact with a chatbot that's designed to support mental health, it can have substantial improvements in that person's outcomes. So speaking to a bot, one that is human level capable, can lead to the same kinds of outcomes when engaging in clinical type conversations. And the ideas here is it's not, really that sort of crazy, right? When people disclose things that are important to them, when they reveal intimate things that they're feeling scared or worried about, and they share that with a bot in this case, we find the same psychological outcomes as if they were talking to a person, including improved self-affirmation, senses of relief, reframing of difficult situations, all the kinds of clinical outcomes that we're hoping for. And so there's a lot of potential here, given that around the world, there are severe shortages in human trained counselors that can deal with the mental health crisis that's currently gripping large parts of the world, especially young people here in the US. So there's a lot of potential there for help. We're also working with groups that are working to develop work coaches. So here you might think, well, I'm a executive, I'm doing really well on all these things like, related to my team and the product I'm working on, but I feel like I'm behind on my time management and I could use help with that. And so one company that I work with is we're building these chatbots that then try and help executives, workers, employees improve skills that they need to be better at their job. And here we often do human in the loop type work where you have a human that's interacting with a chatbot, but that chatbot is working on behalf of an actual coach who's sort of overseeing the interaction. And there's a lot of potential here because there's more demand for this kind of coaching than there are people available to provide it. And chatbots have some advantages too. They don't judge, right? And so sometimes people are willing to ask for help in ways that they wouldn't with another person. And finally, an area I don't do a lot of work in, I'm not a super creative person, but we're seeing a lot of new work around creativity and how AI can change music, the visual arts, and even things like dance and sport. There's the advent now of a lot of visual synthesizers with AI, including Stable Diffusion most recently, that can create really remarkable images and enhance artists' capacity. So there are a lot of really positive potentials here, and I'm going to wait until towards the end to talk about some of the possible negatives or threats. Now, another kind of AI that augments human capability is what we call AI-mediated communication. Here, it's not a human talking to another AI, it's that humans are talking to humans, but the AI is operating on the messages. So in the same way that I asked GPT-3 to write the first beginning part of my speech, that is AI-mediated communication. I was speaking as Jeff Hancock, but I was taking language, messages that was generated by AI. And so here we're talking about communication, interpersonal communication we often look at that's optimized, augmented, or even generated by algorithms to achieve specific communication or relation outcomes. In this case, it could be, I was like, I want you to write this entrance for me that will be a really positively viewed start to my speech. And so I'm using the AI to optimize some outcome. You could imagine if you were in sales that you might want to use AI that could help you optimize your ability to convince someone to buy your product, or optimize the trustworthiness of your language. And that's clearly already taking place. There are companies here in Silicon Valley that help you write those kinds of emails to make them as trustworthy, for example, as possible. To give you a sense of how that is going to influence things like trust, imagine that you're thinking of visiting Scotland, and you're going to go to Glasgow, and you're going to go on Airbnb and see if you can find an apartment. And here's somebody named Rick that's renting out a very nice looking apartment, and you think it would be nice to stay there. But you have to make a judgment on whether you trust Rick. So you read this, and because trust and our ability to sense trust is really fast, automatic, we'll make a judgment of, well, okay, this seems like a nice person. Talks about friends and travel, and that seems really nice. But then if I told you that it was actually generated by a software piece of AI that Rick just said, my name's Rick, I'm a student, I live in Glasgow, I like travel like friends, he just enters those things, and then the AI generates that. Well, now, how do we make decisions about trust? That text that we were looking at, where we were judging whether we could trust somebody like Rick, actually wasn't written by Rick anymore. It was written by a machine. And so this could really influence the way we trust one another. And that, although it seems maybe a little unusual, is not. There is AI in human-to-human communication all over the place. So here's an example. This is a PhD student that I work with. He's writing his PhD advisor, Moore, and he says, hey, Moore, my thesis is done, my dissertation's done. And you can see it says, looks great, I think it's perfect, right? And so it's suggesting things that Moore can say back to Maurice. And these are called smart replies, and there are at least 6 billion of these sent a day inside the US on Google's Gmail platform. And so there are many more worldwide. That's billions of messages sent as though they were human, right? So that's really amazing. We see them all over the place on things like LinkedIn. You can just enter a few pieces about your resume, and LinkedIn will write a paragraph that describes you. Or you can ask Google to call a restaurant or some other service, call on your behalf and try and book you an appointment. So now we have AI that's actually operating on your behalf, not just writing messages for you. So this has a lot of implications. Some of them really could be fantastic and good for our society, and some of them really problematic. In the positive way, we've just done a study that was looking at whether GPT-3 could write better pro-vaccination ads than the CDC. And so here are some. I'll show you for a few minutes, and you can see they're all well written. They all do pretty well, but one of them was written by a machine. And what we find is that most people can't tell which one it is. In fact, it was the ones on the left. And amazingly, when we presented this to thousands of people and got them judged on how persuasive they were, we find that people preferred the GPT-3 ones over the CDC. They thought they were stronger arguments and more effective, in part because they were written a little bit more casually and less sort of formula and government sounding. But that said, when we told people that was written by AI, that it was a machine that wrote it, they were less trusted. They didn't like it very much. And so it's complicated. We could use machines to create better messages and maybe lead to more vaccination, but it could also fail if we tell the people that AI created it. Now, the threat here, obviously, is that now that GPT-3 can create human messages, it can create bad messages too, like misinformation. And this, I think, is one of the major threats that we need to think about as society, is how do we regulate the way that the machines use language with us? And so I think this kind of human and AI communication has implications for the way we talk to each other interpersonally, for how we talk, right? We're seeing the language is being used by AI and we're using it, and that's changing the way we talk. We're perhaps being more positive. And last, it has big issues around politics and culture and ethics, especially when we think about misinformation. So I'll leave you with these three main talking points here that I want to make sure are really clear for you all. We need to consider human impact, augment human capabilities, and consider intelligence. Thank you all so much for your attention, and enjoy the rest of the meeting. Thank you.